Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. About a month ago, sitting right in the middle there was Alan Blinder, who used to be the Vice Chairman of the Federal Reserve. And he was on a panel, a 3 or 4 person panel. We were talking about deficit reduction and asking a group of really smart people what they thought we ought to be doing. And I think it was Alan Blinder who said the 800-pound gorilla in the room on deficit reduction is healthcare costs. You know, we live in a country where we spend about twice as much as they do in Japan, get worse results. They cover everybody, we don't. But he said that's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. And I followed up his comment by saying, well, with respect to healthcare cost containment and getting a better result for less money, what's your advice? And he says, I don't really know much about that. He said, but as a layperson, I would just say this, find out what works and do more of that. That's what he said. Find out what works, do more of that. Democratic senators were over at the White House yesterday with the President. Our Republican friends were over there today. And we had a conversation with the President about deficit reduction, and I shared with him Alan Blinder's comments, which I think are not only appropriate for health care, but really for the way we spend money throughout the government. And my own view is, and I shared this with Alan Blinder that day, I said, I think we need to look in every nook and cranny of the federal government, all of our domestic programs, our defense programs, entitlement programs, tax expenditures, and really and just ask this question, is there a way we can get better results for less money or better results for maybe the same amount of money? And we just need to change our culture in government. And that is to focus on from a culture, almost a culture of spendthrift to a culture of thrift. When it comes to tax expenditures, we need to do the same thing. And there's assertions, there's a strong belief in this country, you certainly have heard it here today, that some of the tax expenditures that relate to your industry don't necessarily get us the best result for the amount of money that's being lost to the Treasury. We're going to vote on the legislation, I think, authored by Senator Menendez probably next week. My guess is there aren't 60 votes to pass it. But later this year, we're going to be voting on an effort to try to trim the deficit by about $4 trillion over the next 10 years. And we're going to do that largely on the spending side, maybe $2 of spending for every dollar of revenue. Entitlements will be on the table, domestic spending, defense spending, tax expenditures will be on the table. And I would just say to you that when the vote occurs next week and we don't get 60 votes for Senator Menendez's proposal, that shouldn't be the end of this conversation. And we should continue to have a conversation so that we can try to figure out how do we get a better result for less money, or really how do we get a better bang for the taxpayers' dollars. And it needs to be, your industry needs to be involved in that as well. If I were in your business, I don't pretend to be or to understand it especially well, but I wouldn't consider myself an oil company, and I would consider myself an energy company. And my belief is that's what you do. Most of you do that. And I would just like for you to talk to us about the efforts that you're undertaking in your companies to move us away from fossil fuels, to move us toward sources of energy that impair health less than oil does or fossil fuels do, that enable us to come up with new technologies that we can sell and manufacture products and sell them around the world. Just let's go down the list. And you want to go first, and just tell us what you're doing to help us through your company's efforts to develop renewables, non-polluting forms of energy, and what can we do to help you there?
Well, Senator, first, I agree wholeheartedly with your comments on the deficit, and ultimately, we are an advocate for comprehensive tax reform, and all of these things we're talking about today should be on the table in comprehensive tax reform. As to what we're doing in developing alternative fuels, and we have concentrated principally on transportation fuels because that's what we know the best. We're not an electric power generator, so we're not into windmills, we're not into solar. It's just not our business, but we are in the transportation fuels business. As we've evaluated all the various technologies available out there for alternative transportation fuels, the one that we believe has the most promise, although it is many years away, is to capture biofuels from algae, from various strains of algae. And we have undertaken a joint venture initiative. We've committed $600 million with a company called Synthetics Genomics. They have considerable expertise in mapping genomes because ultimately we think we're going to have to synthesize the type of algae that are necessary to be able to scale up first. We've got to be able to take this to scale and it's got to be delivered at a cost that the consumer can afford. So we think there's a lot of promise in the algae space, but it is a long, long road ahead of us.
Good. Thank you. Please.
Thank you. We continue to ramp up our spending on research and development for alternatives, and we similarly have a program that stresses algae. I would say, though, that fossil fuels has and will continue to represent more than 80% of the energy supply that's required around the world. One of the key things that's very important for our country is natural gas. It's been over the last several years, the technology developments, that we're blessed with a great deal of natural gas. Some thought for decades, and some think even for centuries to come. So we are really applying a lot of research and development, how we can develop natural gas even cleaner and more efficiently. And we think that's just our country's well blessed with these resources for standard of living and development of our economy.
Good, thanks. Yes, sir.
Quickly, we think of oil and gas as the main driver in our business, but on top of that and incremental to that, alternative energy. Quick numbers, we've invested $7 billion over the last several years, most of it in the U.S., around wind, biofuels, lignocellulosic biofuels, biobutanol, solar, and then carbon sequestration. And it's a growing business. It's difficult, but it's growing.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir.
Well, we do absolutely consider ourselves an energy company, and I would tell you that as a company internally, we look and say we want to be the most innovative and competitive energy company in the world. So that's the perspective we take. We've been in all of the businesses that have been mentioned, wind, solar, hydrogen, and others. The one that is emerging for us as the real opportunity is biofuels. We have just recently formed a $12 billion joint venture around current technology for producing large-scale amounts of biofuels, as well as then adding to that the very intense research and development we've been doing to take that to the next level. And it's exciting stuff. I mean, we were talking about using enzymes to speed up the conversion to an ethanol, and another technology that potentially skips the ethanol step and goes straight from a biomass to a gasoline or diesel equivalent. So it's exciting business.
All right, thanks. Last one.
Senator, just in addition to some of the comments that have been made here, we're the largest producer of renewables thanks to our geothermal business. And that's a very active business for us in Indonesia and the Philippines in particular. We too are making investments in advanced biofuels. We too believe it will be some time before those will come to market. One opportunity that I think is out there during this transition phase that you were talking about is energy efficiency investments. We have an energy efficiency company that goes in and makes investments in educational institutions and elsewhere to reduce energy consumed. I think that's a big opportunity, and it's a near-term opportunity across this country.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much.